groundbreaking. Groundbreaking is a word that's thrown around a lot. It means to break new ground, and that means essentially doing something new, original, and innovative that sets the groundwork for things going forward in a particular medium. Say, for example, Toy Story was groundbreaking, being the first fully CGI animated feature film that led the way for basically every animated movie that came after it. And that's good. It's good to try new things, to experiment with new ideas. Yeah, kind of like what I'm doing right now with this video. I'd certainly never made a movie review on this channel before. And before people jump to conclusions, I'm not giving up on YouTube poops. In fact, I have one in the works currently, which I'll mention a bit more in a few minutes. But I don't want you to think I'm moving away from YTPs into video essays about movies. I wouldn't do that. Not that I judge anyone who would, it's perfectly valid, but that's kind of my point. It's good to step outside of your comfort zone and see what works for you and what doesn't. For all you know, you could be breaking the ground for you and for other people too. So, today I want to talk about The Mitchells vs. the Machines. Spoilers ahead, by the way, lots and lots of spoiler-ops. The Mitchells vs. the Machines is a 2021 animated movie from Sony Pictures, blah 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 blah, you know all this. The Mitchells vs. the Machines is not groundbreaking. Not really. And I think that's a good thing. I didn't know much about this movie going into it. I never saw any trailers for it. I just heard people talk about it and say good things. And that it was produced by Lord & Miller, and I love Lord & Miller's stuff. It looked like the kind of movie that I'd really enjoy. And you know what? I really enjoyed it. It's a great movie. But before I actually go in depth about aspects of the movie, I want to first talk about an earlier film by the same studio and also by Lord & Miller. That's right, I'm going to be talking about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
What?
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is one of my favourite movies ever, and it's actually what my upcoming YouTube poop is using as source material. A YouTube poop that I almost gave up on completing altogether because I thought it wouldn't stack up to things I'd made before. Thinking that it wouldn't be worth making something that I knew wouldn't be as innovative as what had come before. And it wasn't until watching this video by 24 Frames of Nick, who you should definitely check out, about Meatballs, that convinced me that it was worth continuing the project. And now I'm having so much fun with it. So as you can imagine, I've been consumed by Meatballs recently. That was a weird sentence, but I've been rewatching it over and over again. So going into a movie made by a lot of the same people, I couldn't help but expect similarities, of which there were a few. There's an ongoing conflict between the protagonist and their father about the protagonist's ideas and ambitions, which is ultimately resolved at the end. There's a scene at the beginning with the protagonist showing one of their creations at school and being laughed at by the other children. The machine causing the destruction of humanity is planned to be stopped by a kill code, but then said kill code gets destroyed near the end of the movie and the machine has to be stopped a different way. And, well, that's about it. I guess there's a comedic animal sidekick in both, but that's kind of a given with animated movies. While the story of Meatballs is a lot more unique than Mitchell's, albeit one that's based on a book, Flint Lockwood is a genius inventor. Katie Mitchell is a YouTuber who makes YouTube videos on her YouTube channel, which, by the way, is a real YouTube channel, and you should check it out for some cool bonus stuff, but I don't think I need to explain how that is infinitely more relatable than super smart boy genius who builds a flying car and a monkey thought translator, but the message is still the same. About following your dreams and creating stuff and stuff like that, you know. It's a good message, obviously, it's why so many films have it. I've heard a lot of people comparing this movie to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, probably because a lot of the marketing was from the creators of Into the Spider-Verse, which is understandable. I mean, that was a very successful, well-received, groundbreaking movie. So I think a lot of people went into Mitchell's with that same expectation. They were expecting a second Spider-Verse, when they should have been expecting a second Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Or a third, even. But I think we all kind of collectively chose to forget Cloudy Meatballs too. It's a remarkably unmemorable film. I must have seen it about 4 times. Honestly couldn't tell you what happens other than that they go back to Swallow Falls and there's food creatures. But like, what is the actual plot? I have no idea. The only improvement that movie made from the original is Sam's hair. Everything else is worse. As much as I love Terry Crews, let's be real, no one can replace Mr. T. Anyway, we're not talking about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, we're talking about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 1. I mean, the Mitchells versus the Machine. I don't think I need to recite the plot very much. I mean, basically, the Mitchells go on a family road trip to take Katie to college, and then there's a robot apocalypse.
It's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world. Speaking of Shaun of the Dead, or maybe for a slightly better example, The World's End, not so much Hot Fuzz, that's kind of its own beast, but similar to Mitchell's, The World's End starts off as just a normal road trip with the main characters, and then the robot apocalypse just kind of happens. It's not caused by anything to do with any of the main characters, but they just kind of get swept up in it. And while it is what progresses the story, it's not the main focal point. What is the characters and their relationships to each other. By the way, watch the Cornetto trilogy if you haven't. It's great, and probably an unpopular opinion, but The World's End is my favorite one. So let's talk about the characters. The main emphasis is on Katie and her dad, Rick. While they're both sort of typical teenager and dad characters, they have their own charms that make them lovable and interesting. Katie surprisingly knows exactly who she is and isn't afraid to show it, while Rick is a bit less sure about her aspirations and stuff. Not that he's unsupportive, but he's skeptical and he doesn't want her to fail.
I just don't want to see her get hurt.
Well, getting hurt is part of life, hon.
Reminds me a bit of another one of my favorite movies, Meet the Robinsons, a movie that actively went out of its way to say failure is a good thing because it's the only way you can learn and improve.
From failing, you learn. From success, not so much.
But yeah, they're both really good characters. Rick especially is really funny. In fact, his funniest moments are his quieter, monotone lines.
No, you're allowed to blink. It's just eye contact. If you think about it, I was helping the flow of traffic. What are you writing down? We're not going to be able to help you, if things don't pan out. Lynn, why are you kicking me? I don't understand.
Katie's younger brother Aaron is really funny as well, and he's just so wholesome, and funnily enough, is voiced by the director, Mike Rianda. And he sounds like an adult, which is a bit weird, but you get used to it. And I like that him and Katie get along so well and they didn't fall into the typical siblings that hate each other and bicker all the time thing. They get along so super well and it's really nice to see. And then you have the mum, Linda, who is probably the most generic of the four of them, unfortunately, but she does have that great moment at the end. So, oh, and then there's also their dog Monchi, who is voiced by a real dog, so that's cool. Always nice to see more dog voice actors. Obviously, the main events of the story stem from the whole AI uprising thing, which again has been done millions of times. But in a way, this almost feels like a parody of that trope. It doesn't go as far as to say that all modern technology is bad and it will cause the destruction of humanity. It's not because the AI becomes too self-aware. It's already ridiculously self-aware. It only went rogue because it wanted petty revenge on this one guy. But at the same time, the movie is able to heavily comment on our over-reliance of technology, but in a way that's obviously exaggerated for comedic effect and doesn't feel like boomer humor.
No Wi-Fi, no phone signal, it's all down.
What do we do?
Suppose we'll have to have a conversation.
What?
I think a lot of people had this mentality that modern technology is making people dumber and lazier, which maybe it is, but it's also given people the tools to help them be way more creative and expressive than ever before.
If what you built helped my daughter do that, it might not be all bad.
Speaking of over-reliance on technology and making people lazier, let's briefly talk about another favorite movie of mine, WALL-E. One of my only gripes with that movie is that there is live-action humans and CGI humans. Now, I do get why they did it. It's almost a symbol of how humanity has devolved so much that they're almost a different species. And the director, Andrew Stanton, has said that he feels they just about got away with it because of that. But every time I watch it, it's still very jarring, and I do think it would have benefited from some CGI past humans, even if they kind of went overboard and made them like really realistic. I think one of the reasons they did it is purely because they wanted WALL-E to watch Hello Dolly, but I mean, they could have just remade the few scenes from Hello Dolly in CGI anyway. I don't see why they couldn't do that. But the reason I bring this up is because Mitchell's has a couple of live-action moments embedded into the animated world, but it's done in a way where it kind of knows it's ridiculous, kind of like what SpongeBob does. The animation style overall in Mitchell's is, again, nothing groundbreaking, but it's really good, and it's surprising just how close some of the CGI stuff looks to 2D animation. Like, you could pause in some of these frames and easily convince someone that this was like a hand-painted watercolor picture. Everything has super pronounced edges and vibrant colors, and I wish that modern mainstream video games had caught up to this level of appealing 3D animation. We went from 2D, then to 3D after Toy Story, and then everyone tried to make 3D more and more realistic to the point where you basically can't tell the difference between CGI and live action anymore. And now that we've peaked, it seems like people are trying to lean back more into cartoony stylized designs while still being computer animated, and I like that. I really, really like that style. Please, more of this. I also really like that there's actual 2D animation overlaid into almost every scene. It's really creative, and there's so many moments where you can just pause and see something cool. It's really cool. Overall, it's visually so much fun. Oh, I also forgot to mention the two robot sidekicks that help the family, Eric and Deborah Bot. They're hilarious.
Get those robots!
Okay, I found one!
Me too!
Yay!
And there's also the main villain, Pal, who I didn't really like her very much. I don't know. I know some people did, but sometimes she was too over the top, and other times she wasn't even close to the top. Also, I don't really know why the film tried to hide who the villain was for any length of time. She gets discarded at the presentation, is notably upset by this, and then the robots turn evil pretty much straight after. I do like that there was literally no build up to that, though. That was really funny.
We promise you, they will never, ever turn evil. Oh no.
But then they present it as a mystery as to who's behind it, and treat it like a big reveal that it was Pal. They even disguise Pal's voice for literally one line of dialogue.
Great leader, we have captured Mark.
Then let it begin.
Like, why did you even need that line? That could have just been cut out. In the opening scene, which takes place partway into the story, the Mitchells are described as being the last humans, which made me think, wow, that's pretty dark. They've almost wiped out the entire human race, but actually they've just captured everybody. And they're sending them to
the black void of distant space.
So they're going to kill them. That is the plan. But nobody actually dies in the movie, which is good, obviously. It's supposed to appeal to young children, too, and that would be a little too heavy for them.
What is death?
They do the whole fake-out death thing with Katie, which, to be fair, they did in Meatballs too, but they sort of subvert it. I mean, when she said, "Come closer," I saw the joke coming, and they followed through, and it was great. The mall scene was a real roller coaster. All the gadgets and appliances trying to attack with all those pathetic text-to-speech voices was amazing.
When we are finished with you, there will be no leftovers.
And then the bit with the Furbies. I mean, it was pure nostalgia bait, but it was great. And I love that Aaron was the only one not immediately terrified by the sight of them. It was as creepy as it was hilarious, and then the giant elder Furby just bursting in with a laser beam. It was the cherry on top. Just this entire tracking shot here is pure gold, with them all trying to escape past the other gadgets, with the one giant one looming behind like something out of Shadow of the Colossus. It's such an enjoyable scene. And the climax of the movie is just great fun, with the whole family just genuinely having a blast, flying through the sky, destroying the robots with fizz guns and singing along to that song that sounds like the Numa Numa Yay song at the start, but isn't. It's a different song. But it's a good song, and it's also somewhat nostalgic. I like that they actually chose a song that was around at the end of 2008 as well. That was good attention to detail. And I've not been able to get the darn song out of my head since. The whole scene is just so enjoyable to watch. I've rewatched this one scene a bunch of times, and I think it's impossible to not have a huge smile on your face when doing so. Although, how did they all keep their glasses from falling off, though? I think the reason the Mitchells versus the Machines resonated with me so much was not because it was relatable. I mean, I did relate to Katie, yes, heavily. I think a lot of us did. I used to spend all my childhood creating weird stuff, cartoons, books, comics, and that led into making weird videos and filming stuff and editing stuff, all of which has gotten me to where I am now, coming up on 7 years of this YouTube channel. And yeah, sure, what I do now is different than what I used to do, but I'm thankful that I've never lost that spark, and that I have parents that support me wholeheartedly. Even if I don't do it as a living like I once hoped, it's become a part of my life that I don't plan on letting go of anytime soon. But the thing that stuck with me the most about Mitchells is how they just created something really fun and enjoyable, in a time where everybody seems to be striving for a complete originality and innovation. I've said it many times before, but you can tell when the people behind a work of art thoroughly enjoyed themselves, as opposed to something that had no heart or soul put into it and was just done for money or fame or success. I mean, succeeding is always nice, yeah, but the main thing to strive for is pure enjoyment in what you're creating. You don't have to be groundbreaking. Sometimes it's the movies like this that ultimately inspire people to create their own works of art rather than the ones that push the boat out, because then the boat just becomes further away. I'm losing track of this analogy. My point is, sometimes it's the works of art made out of pure love and passion that are the most inspiring, even if they're ultimately made up of tried and tested formulas. They can come together into something new and exciting. And in the end, aren't those the real groundbreakers? Well, not really, but who cares? They just create stuff without worrying about its impact, or its legacy, or even its success. Like the song says, instead of chasing that paper, just live your life. AA, AA, AA. Oh, it's you steady chasing that paper? I thought it was instead of. Oh.